hot December day, with a cloudless blue sky and a sun blazing down on the earth. Such a description of snowy December sounds perchance a trifle strange to English ears, but here in Australia we are in the realm of contrariety. Here black swans are an established fact. Here iron wood sinks, and pumice stone floats, which must strike the curious spectator as a queer freak on the part of Dame Nature. But however contrary Nature may be in her dealings, the English race out in this great continent are much the same as in the old country, being of a conservative turn of mind and with strong opinions as to the keeping up of old customs. Therefore John Bull abroad keeps his Christmas and wears his clothes without regard to heat or cold. A nation that never surrenders to the fire of an enemy cannot be expected to give in to the fire of the sun. Madge Frettlby was thinking somewhat after this fashion as she sat on the veranda, in a state of exhaustion from the heat. The trial through which she had so recently passed had been a great one, and it had not been without its outward result. It had left its impress on her beautiful face, and there was a troubled look in her eyes. After Brian's acquittal of the murder of Oliver White, she had been taken by her father up to their sheep station in the hope that it would restore her to health, for the mental strain which had been on her during the trial had nearly brought on an attack of brain fever. Women are more impressionable than men, and it is perhaps for this reason that they age quicker. A trouble which would pass lightly over a man leaves an indelible mark on a woman both physically and mentally, and the terrible episode of White's murder had changed Madge from a bright and merry girl into a grave and beautiful woman. She saw the world now not as the fantastic fairyland of her girlish dreams, but as the sorrowful vale of tears, through which we must all walk till we reach the promised land. And for Brian, he also had undergone a change, for there were a few white hairs now amid his curly chestnut locks, and his character, from being gay and bright, had become moody and irritable. After the trial he had left town immediately in order to avoid meeting with his friends, and had gone up to his own station, which was next to that of the Frettlbys. There he worked hard all day and smoked hard all night, thinking ever on the secret which the dead woman had told him and which threatened to overshadow his life. Every now and then he rode over and saw Madge, but this was generally when he knew her father to be away, for of late he had disliked the millionaire. Madge could not but condemn his attitude, remembering how her father had stood beside him in his recent trouble. Suddenly she started as she heard a step behind her. Turning, she saw Sal Rawlins, in the neatest of black gowns, with a coquettish white cap and apron. Madge had been so delighted with Sal for saving Brian's life with her evidence at the trial that she had taken her into her service as maid. Mr. Frettlby had offered strong opposition at first that a fallen woman like Sal should be near his daughter, but Madge was determined to rescue the unhappy girl from the life of sin she was leading, and so at last he reluctantly consented. Brian, too, had objected, but ultimately yielded, as he saw that Madge had set her heart on it. Mother Guttersnipe objected at first, characterizing the whole affair as cussed humbug, but she, likewise, finally gave in, and Sal became maid to Miss Frettlby. "Sit down here," said Madge, leaning back in her seat, "and talk to me." Sal complied, and after a short pause, Madge turned her clear grey eyes on the woman. "I want to ask you something." The other shivered and turned pale. About that?" Sal hesitated for a moment and then flung herself at the feet of her mistress. "I will tell you," she cried. "You have been kind to me, and have a right to the truth. I will tell you all I know." "Then," asked Madge firmly, as she clasped her hands tightly together, "who was this woman whom Mr. Fitzgerald went to see, and where did she come from?" "Gran and me found her one evening in Little Burke Street, just near the theatre. She was quite drunk, and we took her home with us." "How kind of you." "Oh, it wasn't that. Gran wanted her clothes. She was awful swell dressed." "And she took the clothes? How wicked!" "Anyone would have done it down our way.
But Gran changed her mind when she got her home. I went out to get some gin for Gran, and when I come back, she was hugging and kissing the woman. She recognised her? Yes, I suppose so. Next morning, when the lady got over the drink, she made a grab at Gran and hollered out, "You! I was coming to see you!" And then? Gran chucked me out of the room, and they had a long jaw. And then, when I come back, Gran tells me the ladies are going to stay with us 'cause she was ill, and sent me for Mr. White. And he came? Oh, yes. Often. He kicked up a row when he first turned up, but when he found she was ill, he sent a doctor. But it wasn't no good. She was 2 weeks with us and then died the morning she saw Mr. Fitzgerald. I suppose Mr. White was in the habit of talking to this woman? Lots. But he always turned Gran and me out of the room before he started. And did you ever overhear one of these conversations? Yes, one. I got riled at the way he cleared us out of our own room, and once when he shut the door and Gran went off to get some gin, I sat down at the door and listened. Madge leaned forward. And what did you hear, Sal? He said he wanted her to give up some paper, and she wouldn't. She said she'd die first, but at last he got him and took him away with him. The assertion White had been murdered for a certain document flashed across Madge's mind. Did you see this paper? Rather, said Sal. I was looking through a hole in the door, and she takes it from under her pillow. It was in a large blue envelope with writing on it in red ink. He takes it to the table, where the candle was, and looks at it. Then he puts it back in the envelope and stuffs it in his pocket, and she sings out, "You'll lose it!" And he says, "No, I'll always have it with me, and if he wants it, he'll have to kill me first before he gets it." And did you know who this other man was, to whom this paper was of such importance? No, I didn't. They never said no names. When was it White got the paper? About a week before he was murdered, said Sal after a moment's thought. And that was the last time he come. She kept watching for him night and day, and 'cause he didn't come, got mad at him. I hear her saying, "You think you've done with me, my gentleman, and leaves me here to die, but I'll spoil your little game." And then she wrote that letter to Mr. Fitzgerald, and I brought him to her, as you know. Yes, yes, said Madge rather impatiently. I heard all that at the trial. But what conversation passed between Mr. Fitzgerald and this woman? Did you hear it? Bits of it, replied the other. I didn't split in court, 'cause I thought the lawyer would be down on me for listening. The first thing I heard Mr. Fitzgerald saying was, "You're mad, it ain't true." And she says, "So help me, it is. White's got the proof." And then he sings out, "My poor girl." And she says, "Will you marry her now?" And says he, "I will. I love her more than ever." And then she makes a grab at him and says, "Spoil his game if you can." And says he, "What's your name?" And she says, "What?" "Rosanna Moore." There was a sharp exclamation as Sal said the name, and turning round quickly, Madge found Brian standing beside her, pale as death, with his eyes fixed on the woman. "Go on." "That's all I know." Brian gave a sigh of relief. "You can go. I wish to speak with Miss Frettlby alone." Sal looked at him for a moment and then glanced at her mistress, who nodded to her as a sign that she might withdraw. With another sharp, inquiring look at Brian, the maid turned and walked slowly into the house. After Sal had gone, Brian sank into a chair beside Madge with a weary sigh. He was in riding dress, which became his stalwart figure well, and he looked remarkably handsome, but ill and worried. He took his hat off and tossed it and his gloves onto the floor. "What on earth were you questioning that girl about?" Madge flushed crimson for a moment, and then, taking Brian's two strong hands in her own, looked steadily into his frowning face. "Why? Don't you trust me?" "It is not necessary that I should. The secret that Rosanna Moore told me on her deathbed is nothing that would benefit you to know." "Is it about me?" she persisted. "It is, and it is not," he answered. She released his hands. "I suppose that means it is about a third person and concerns me." "Well, yes." He impatiently struck his boot with his riding whip. "But it is nothing that can harm you so long as you do not know it. But God help you should anyone tell it to you, for it would embitter your life." "My life being so very sweet now?" "You're trying to put out a fire by pouring oil on it, and what you say only makes me more determined to learn what it is. Madge, I implore you not to persist in this foolish curiosity. It will bring you only misery. If it concerns me, I have a right to know it. When I marry you, how can we be happy together, with the shadow of a secret between us?" Brian fell on his knees beside her and stretched out his hands with an entreating gesture. "Oh, my darling, cannot you trust me? The love which has stood such a test as yours cannot fail like this. Let me bear the misery of knowing it alone, without blighting your young life with the knowledge of it. I would tell you if I could, but God help me, I cannot. I cannot." And he buried his face in his hands. Madge closed her mouth firmly and touched his comely head with her cool white fingers. There was a struggle going on in her breast between her feminine curiosity and her love for the man at her feet, but the latter conquered, and she bowed her head over his. "Brian, let it be as you wish. I will never again try to learn this secret, since you do not desire it." He arose to his feet and caught her in his strong arms with a glad smile. "My dearest." He kissed her passionately, and then for a few moments neither of them spoke. "We will begin a new life," he said at length. "We will put the sad past away from us and think of it only as a dream." "But this secret will still fret you." "It will wear away with time and with change of scene." "Change of scene? Are you going away?" "Yes. I have sold my station, and intend leaving Australia forever during the next 3 months. "But where are you going?" "Anywhere. I'm going to follow the example of Cain and be a wanderer on the face of the earth." "Alone?" Brian looked steadily at her. "That is what I have come to see you about. I have come to ask you if you will marry me at once, and we will leave Australia together." She hesitated. "I know it is asking a great deal to leave your friends, your position, and your father. But think of my life without you. Think how lonely I shall be, wandering round the world by myself. You will not desert me now I have so much need of you. Will you come with me, and be my good angel in the future as you have been in the past?" She put her hand on his arm, and looking at him with her clear grey eyes, said, "Yes." "Thank God for that," said Brian reverently, and there was again a silence. Then they sat down and talked about their plans and built castles in the air after the fashion of lovers. "I wonder what Papa will say," observed Madge, idly twisting her engagement ring round and round. Brian frowned, and a dark look passed over his face. "I suppose I must speak to him about it?" "Yes, of course. It is merely a formality, but still one that must be observed." "And where is Mr. Frettlby?" asked Brian, rising. "In the billiard-room," she answered, as she followed his example. "Oh, no," as she saw her father step onto the veranda. "Here he is." Brian had not seen Mark Frettlby for some time, and was astonished at the change which had taken place in his appearance. Formerly he had been as straight as an arrow, with a stern, fresh-coloured face, but now he had a slight stoop, his face looked old and withered, and his thick black hair was streaked here and there with white. His eyes alone were unchanged. They were as keen and bright as ever. Brian knew full well how he himself had altered. He knew, too, that Madge was not the same. And now he could not but wonder whether the great change that was apparent in her father was attributable to the same source, to the murder of Oliver White. Sad and thoughtful as Mr. Frettlby looked as he came along, a smile broke over his face as he caught sight of his daughter. "My dear Fitzgerald, this is indeed a surprise.
When did you come over?"
Brian took the extended hand of the millionaire. "About half an hour ago. I came to see Madge and to have a talk with you."
"Ah," said the other, putting his arm round his daughter's waist. "So that's what has brought the roses to your face, young lady. You will stay to dinner, of course, Fitzgerald."
"Thank you, no." He indicated his riding clothes. "My dress."
"Nonsense. We are not in Melbourne, and I'm sure Madge will excuse your dress. You must stay."
"Yes, do. I don't see so much of you that I can let you off with half an hour's conversation." Brian seemed to be making a violent effort.
"Very well," he said finally. "I shall stay."
Frettleby sat down.
"And now, the important question of dinner being settled, what is it you want to see me about? Your sheep station?"
"No, sir." Brian leaned against the veranda post while Madge slipped her hand through his arm. "I have sold it."
"Sold it? What for?"
"I felt restless and wanted a change."
"Ah."
The millionaire shook his head.
"A rolling stone gathers no moss, you know."
"Stones don't roll of their own accord. They are impelled by a force over which they have no control."
"Oh, indeed. And may I ask what is your propelling force?"
Brian looked at the man's face with such a steady gaze that the latter's eyes dropped after an uneasy attempt to return it. It was several moments before he looked up again at the two tall young people standing before him.
"Well, what do you want to see me about?"
"Madge has agreed to marry me at once, and I want your consent."
"Impossible."
"There is no such word as impossible. Why should you refuse? I am rich now."
"Pshaw!" said Frettleby, rising impatiently. "It's not money I'm thinking about. I've got enough for both of you. But I cannot live without Madge."
"Then come with us," said his daughter, kissing him. Her lover, however, did not second the invitation, but stood moodily, twisting his tawny moustache and staring out into the garden in an absent sort of manner.
"What do you say, Fitzgerald?"
Frettleby was eyeing him keenly.
"Oh, delighted, of course." "In that case," returned the other, "I will tell you what we will do. I have bought a steam yacht, and she will be ready for sea about the end of January. You will marry my daughter at once, and go round New Zealand for your honeymoon. When you return, if I feel inclined, and you two turtle doves don't object, I will join you, and we will make a tour of the world."
"Oh, how delightful!" cried Madge, clasping her hands. "I'm so fond of the ocean. With a companion, of course," she added with a saucy glance at her lover. Brian's face had brightened considerably, for he was a born sailor, and a pleasant yachting voyage in the blue waters of the Pacific, with Madge as his companion, was to his mind as near paradise as any mortal could get.
"And what is the name of the yacht?" he asked. "Her name? Oh, a very ugly name, and one which I intend to change. At present she is called the Rosanna." The poet sings, "Oh, there's nothing half so sweet in life as love's young dream." But he made this assertion in his callow days, before he had learned the value of a good digestion. To a young and fervid youth, love's young dream is no doubt very charming, lovers as a rule having a small appetite. But to a man who has seen the world and drunk deeply of the wine of life, there is nothing half so sweet in the whole of his existence as a good dinner. Who does not value as the sweetest in the whole 24 the hour when, seated at an artistically laid table with delicately cooked viands, good wines, and pleasant company, all the cares and worries of the day give place to a delightful sense of absolute enjoyment? Dinner with the English people is generally a very dreary affair. There is a heaviness about the whole thing which communicates itself to the guests,
who eat and drink with a solemn persistence, as though they were occupied in fulfilling some sacred rite. But there are men, alas, few and far between, who possess the art of giving good dinners, good in the sense of sociality as well as in that of cookery. Mark Frettlby was one of these rare individuals. He had an innate genius for getting pleasant people together, people who, so to speak, dovetailed into one another. He had an excellent cook, and his wines were irreproachable, so that Brian, in spite of his worries, was glad that he had accepted the invitation. The bright gleam of the silver, the glitter of glass, and the perfume of flowers, all collected under the subdued crimson glow of a pink-shaded lamp which hung from the ceiling, could not but give him a pleasurable sensation. On one side of the dining-room were the French windows opening onto the veranda, and beyond appeared the vivid green of the trees and the dazzling colours of the flowers, somewhat tempered by the soft, hazy glow of the twilight. Brian had made himself as respectable as possible under the odd circumstances of dining in his riding dress, and sat next to Madge, contentedly sipping his wine and listening to the pleasant chatter which was going on around him. Felix Rolleston was there, with Mrs. Rolleston, née Miss Featherweight, who ruled him with a rod of iron. They had brought up Julia Featherweight with them, and this young person had made up her mind to become the second Mrs. Frettlby. She had not received much encouragement, but like the English at Waterloo, did not know when she was beaten, and carried on the siege of Mr. Frettlby's heart in an undaunted manner. Dr. Chinston had come up for a little relaxation, and gave never a thought to his anxious patients or the many sick rooms he was in the habit of visiting. An aged colonist, full of reminiscences of the old days, when, by gad, sir, we hadn't a gas lamp in the whole of Melbourne, and several other people completed the party. The conversation had turned onto a subject ever green and fascinating. "Have you ever gone in for politics, Mr. Frettlby?" asked Felix. "I? No," said the host, rousing himself out of the brown study into which he had fallen. "I'm afraid I'm not sufficiently patriotic, and my business did not permit me." "And now?" "Now," echoed the millionaire, glancing at his daughter, "I intend to travel." "Ah, the finest thing out," said Chinston. "One never gets tired of seeing the queer things that are in the world." "I've seen queer enough things in Melbourne in the early days," spoke out Valpy, the old colonist, with a wicked twinkle in his eyes. "Oh!" cried Julia, putting her hands up to her ears. "Don't tell me them, for I'm sure they're naughty." "We weren't saints then." "Ah, then we haven't changed much in that respect," retorted Frettlby. "You talk of your theatres now. Why, you haven't got a dancer like Rosanna." Brian started on hearing this name again, and he felt Madge's cold hand touch his. "And who's Rosanna?" "A dancer and burlesque actress. Such a beauty. We were all mad about her, such hair and eyes. You remember her, Frettlby?" "Yes." Before Mr. Valpy had the opportunity to wax more eloquent, Madge rose from the table, and the other ladies followed. Brian sat still and wondered why Frettlby changed colour on hearing the name. He supposed that the millionaire had been mixed up with the actress, and did not care about being reminded of his early indiscretions. And after all, who does? "She was as light as a fairy," continued Valpy with a wicked smile. "What became of her?" Mark Frettlby looked up suddenly as Fitzgerald asked this question. "She went to England in 1858. I'm not quite sure if it was July or August, but it was in 1858. "You will excuse me, Valpy, but I hardly think that these reminiscences of a ballet dancer are amusing." Frettlby poured himself out a glass of wine. "Let us change the subject." Notwithstanding the plainly expressed wish of his host, Brian felt strongly inclined to pursue the conversation. Politeness, however, forbade such a thing, and he consoled himself with the reflection that after dinner he would ask old Valpy about the ballet dancer whose name caused Mark Frettlby to exhibit such strong emotion.
But, to his annoyance, when the gentleman went into the drawing-room, Frettleby took the old colonist off to his study, where he sat with him the whole evening, talking over old times. It was an exquisite night, with a cloudless blue sky glittering with stars, and a great yellow moon in the west. Madge seated herself on the side of the marble ledge which girdled the still pool of water in front of the house, and dipped her hand into the cool water. Brian leaned against the trunk of a great magnolia tree, whose glossy green leaves and great creamy blossoms looked fantastic in the moonlight. In front of them was the house, with the ruddy lamplight streaming through the wide windows, and they could see the guests within, their dark figures passing and repassing the windows, while the charming music of the waltz mingled with their merry laughter. "Looks like a haunted house," said Brian, thinking of Poe's weird poem. "But such a thing is impossible out here." "You don't believe in ghosts?" "There's a banshee in our family. She's supposed to cheer our deathbeds with her howlings, but I've never seen the lady myself." "It's aristocratic to have a ghost in a family, I believe," said Madge. "That is the reason we colonials have none." "Ah, but you will have. There are, no doubt, democratic as well as aristocratic ghosts. Ah, but what nonsense I talk. There are no ghosts, except of a man's own raising. The ghosts of a dead youth, the ghosts of past follies, the ghosts of what might have been. These are the spectres which are more to be feared than those of the churchyard." Madge looked at him in silence, for she understood the meaning of that passionate outburst. He was thinking of the secret which the dead woman had told him, and which hung like a shadow over his life. She arose quietly and took his arm. The light touch roused him, and a faint wind sent an eerie rustle through the still leaves of the magnolia as they walked back in silence to the house.